What is it like to be in prison for 20 years, not as an inmate, but part of the staff that keeps them behind bars? A glimpse inside maximum security prison. Welcome to Purgatory. What's going on, freaks and freakettes? I'm Spike.
And I'm mad.
All right, so we have a guest today that I'm very excited about. It's a hard guy to pin down. He's got a lot going on in his life. But this gentleman, Mr. Les Rup, is a recent retiree of, you made a living working in the prison system, right?
Right. I've worked in 4 different facilities and toured a short time in maybe another dozen or more.
Jeez. So we've got a lot of questions for this gentleman. Now, what security level were those facilities at? Were they?
I've worked everything from what they would call supermaxes all the way down to what they call a camp or a boot camp, where guys are supervised 100% of the day or where they get very little supervision.
So when you're dealing with inmates on, what's the difference between like an inmate on a camp level or an inmate at a supermax level? Is it their crime or is it their behavior while incarcerated?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, the question you're leading off with, I took some notes on things that I thought I might like to steer things towards. And one of the things is, what's it like on the inside? I mean, what's a facility like? Because you drive by these places and you look at them and you just don't even really know, because they don't let everybody come in and look around. And the best way I can tell you to think about any of the correctional facilities is, think of your school days and think of a school that you don't get to leave for days, weeks, months, possibly years or decades. And you pretty much see the same people every single day. And there's lots of different settings within this system. I mean, some of them are really secure because you've done some things in your life that they're really worried about you and the way you interact with other people. And then there's other places where things are less structured because maybe what you did wasn't as dangerous or as violent. And those, they have a point sheet when people are convicted, and they fill in this point sheet. And the more points you get would be the more restricted environment that you're put in. And so what places a person in a maximum security type environment is, they have a lot of points. So they've got continuous lifetime violent behavior, and they've proven many, many times that they're capable of extreme violence. So they're managed as someone who may act out. And then you get somebody who may have started out in that kind of level, and maybe they've graduated down to a less structured environment because they've shown lots of great behavior. Or maybe somebody just entered the system and they have a low-level crime, and so they get low-level custody and they're treated with more freedom. So I don't know if that answered your question, but I hope it did.
Well, does that change how you approach an interaction with an inmate?
Yeah, I mean, if you've got a guy who's been very, very violent in the past, you always approach everybody with respect. There's just certain rules that we tried to live by, I suppose, because it was just good to, it's good rules for anybody, but one of them was tell the truth and obey God's 9 commandments, because but for the grace of God go I. Second thing I tried to live by was always finish your shift no matter how bad it gets, and go home. Keep work at work and home at home, and never the two shall meet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's like 9 of these. There's no secrets in a prison. Everybody's a snitch. Trust no one, including me.
So this is like a creed or like a set of rules that all correctional officers know?
Well, there was just a really kind of a wise old sage correctional officer, and he would say these things, and we thought, that is really rich. I mean,
it's profound as hell, right?
We need to remember that, and so we started writing them down, and we just called them Theory 101, 102, 103.
Yeah.
And we had this list, and So here's another one he said. He said, never underestimate or disrespect anyone. The most infirmed, jaundiced, juvenile, he had a whole string of words, Hep B, HIV positive, they're all created in God's image, have a human soul with intellect and value. Remember, many of the books of the Bible were written in prison by an inmate.
That's true.
And there is no us and them, only we. So we have to spend our day together, our time together. We all want to make it as livable and as positive as possible. I mean, we've got to work there and they've got to live there, and everybody does really want to get along. I mean, TV kind of plays up the, a negative drama. Most of the time, nobody wants to live that drama. So and there's another thing that guy said. He said, the new staff member you're so frustrated today that you are breaking in is going to be your boss tomorrow. I thought that was hilarious. The new inmate that you see in admissions today will either try to kill you or save your life 3 times in the next 20 years. So it's how you treat them today that makes your bones with them. I thought that was really good.
Right.
He said, look for who's really running things, who holds the juice. It's normally not where you expect it to be. I mean, a lot of guys are just puppets. In the real world, it's that way. We're puppets of our bosses on every job, and it's that way inside also. And there's always a boss pulling the strings, and you probably will not believe who it is when you're done. Yeah, everybody's got a hidden agenda. Understand the motivation in everything you do.
These don't seem like bad rules just for life.
Yeah, no kidding. Another thing is he said, don't think too much of yourself, because everybody around here is going to remember you about as long as it takes for you to dip your hand in a bucket of water, pull it out, hold it over your head on a windy day, and for that hand to dry. So, it's like,
what a metaphor.
Yeah, that's not very long. And then you'll never be a true correctional worker until you're at Walmart and you hear over the PA system, customer needs assistance in aisle 5, and you take off running.
Oh, shit.
So, yeah, that's real. I mean, that happened to me.
Yeah, that's pretty gnarly. I mean, it's got to be interesting. Like, everybody's under lock and key, including the officers. I mean, you can get out, but I mean, everybody's pretty much locked in there. And it's got to be crazy. People just have been locked up. And I mean, if any sane person that gets locked up, you could kind of go nuts after a while, right?
Well, most of the time, people get used to the routine of the life they're in. And those guys are no different. I mean, each facility has a different day set up, a different routine set up. They're just like us. I mean, our alarm goes off in the morning and we get up and we brush our teeth, we do our toiletries, and we head to, we do breakfast and probably, or we hit Starbucks or something on the way to work. But we have our routine whether we know it or not. And we impose a routine on them that gives a certain amount of discipline to their life. I mean, I was talking to a guy that was, he was sentenced to all day, a life sentence. And he says, yeah, my mom's actually really proud of me. He said, I'm in bed by 10 o'clock every night now.
Oh, no.
So, yeah, he's like, I get up early, I work hard all day, I come back, watch a little TV, and I'm in bed by 10 o'clock every night.
Oh,
and she knows where I am.
Yeah, she knows right where you're going to be, too.
So, yeah, it's kind of a different way of looking at things, but.
Yeah, for sure. So, Matt, I know you have a couple questions for big dude here. What do you got?
I mean, like my first one would be something along the lines of like on like the lighter side, what was like one of the funniest situations you were placed in, or even like on like the scarier side, like what was like one of like the scariest situations you were placed on?
Let's go light first.
Yeah.
That's the question. So
So as you know, a lot of guys end up with a nickname. Okay, like how do you get a nickname in those places? And this one guy's name was Spaghetti Eddie. Well, Spaghetti Eddie got his name because one day he was all pissed off and he wanted to create a lot of attention on himself for whatever the issue was. And he was one of those guys that's locked down a lot. And,
what does lockdown mean?
Well,
let's frame that in.
He was in his cell for a large part of his day. And he got out to shower, he got out for exercise, he got out to go see counselors. There were lots of people that came by and checked on him and talked to him throughout the day, but there was a large part of his day where he was actually in his cell. And for whatever reason, he decided to make a statement, a negative statement, and got a lot of attention coming his way. And he was told, well, hey, you've basically messed up your cell enough that we want to move you to another healthier place. So they moved him to, going to move him to a different cell. And he's like, no, I like this one. Well, this one, we need to move it to clean it, or we need to move it to paint it, or we need to move you to fix the toilet, or whatever the malfunction was. I don't remember what he had messed up, faucet, water faucet, whatever the problem was, we had to move him. And he's like, I'm not moving, not even for 5 minutes. Well, we need to move it so we can get the plumber in there or the electrician in there, or whatever the issue was. Yeah. And so he didn't want to move. So now we have this conversation point where he doesn't want to move, and we need to move him to do the work to care for him better.
Yeah.
And so he decides to use his lunch meal, his spaghetti, and slather himself in spaghetti so that he'd be all slippery, so we couldn't grab a hold of him. So when we went in there, it's all over the walls, it's all over the floor, it's all over him. It smells like, Olive Garden. And so we go in there to get this guy and escort him to another place, and he's all slathered with this stuff, and it was kind of hysterical because everything's slippery. And he put shampoo all over himself, and it was just, it was a cross between, and it was like strawberry shampoo or something, so it smelled like a salad, and the guy just smelled like Olive Garden. So we put him in a different place. We fixed the problem that was in his cell and cleaned it up as best we could. And then we took him back, and he had fresh laundry, he had fresh clothes, he had all the stuff. And we gave him cleaning supplies so he could clean his place. But from that on, he was Spaghetti Eddie. And his name wasn't even Eddie. It was something else. But, Eddie rhymed with spaghetti, and it was cool. So, yeah. So that's pretty much what his name became. I thought that was pretty hilarious.
That's awesome.
And then to top it off, how you talk about keep work at work and home things at home. So we go home after that day. And no kidding, we had spaghetti with angel hair pasta. So yeah, that was
You're like, son of a bitch.
I'm eating my stuff thinking, oh man, I had that on me like for 2 hours today.
Yeah. That's we're kind of on this point, so I'm just going to ask one of my questions real quick. Now, what's it like to, like you said, you moved him to another place and he didn't want to move. So I'm guessing there was physical confrontation. So my question is, what's it like to be in a situation where you just got done wrestling somebody that might want to kill you or is clearly combative, your adrenaline's pumping, and you're in this place with these people, and then you come home, and I mean, I know that you're a family man, so you come home you got to be dad now.
Yeah. How
is that? Like, how do you do that?
Well, everything is always done with the least amount of force necessary. And so you get you get conditioned, you get trained to only meter out what needs to be done and no more. And then you get conditioned to leave it at work and keep home at home and work at work. And I'm not kidding you. Literally, I went through the motions and everybody thought I was crazy, but I would go to the door and I would stop in the middle of the doorway with the line behind me trying to get to work. And I would stop in the middle of the doorway and I would bend over and put my hand down to the ground like I was releasing a handle on a suitcase. That was my baggage from work. And I'd pick up the baggage for the house, and then I would go to the house. And then in the morning, going to work, I'd do it the opposite way. I would set down the bag for the house. I'd pick up the baggage for work, and I'd walk in. And that's how I could keep it separated.
Wow.
Yeah, so literally I had to develop that mental metaphor of leaving my stuff at the door so that I don't take home into work and work to home. So
wow. That's some Jedi shit.
And everybody just thought I was crazy. And I was.
Well, I find that unique. I don't know if crazy is the right word, You know, but I mean, if you're in a crazy situation, so maybe crazy solutions are not off the table in a crazy situation.
Yeah,
You
for
know?
me, it was just a way to keep it, keep it separate. So
Yeah,
little
it's got to be
technique that helped.
difficult. That's pretty cool though. Now, all right, what you got, man?
Well, on like the flip side of my question, like maybe like any like scary situations you were placed under, like maybe someone broke out or something, just any kind of stories like that.
Well, I mean, yeah, there was some of that, but when that stuff happens, you're trained to deal with those things. So your training kicks in, and you don't really react. Everything's very calculated, and a lot of times you have meetings before those situations happen or as they're happening, and you've got great advice, and nothing that they can come up with has not been tried or done before. So there's always procedures for everything you'll face, and most of the time you don't go into a situation completely cold. It's pretty calculated when you go in, so it's usually pretty well rehearsed, and you're not usually facing something that's just total surprise. But I want to address a myth. I got one for you. So people hear about like dumb criminals, right? And they think, well, yeah, they're really dumb because this guy rode a bicycle home in the snow from a bank robbery. That guy's really stupid. No, he wanted to get caught. He's trying to work the system because he was out for a while. He did the things he had on his bucket list, and now he wanted to go back. So how do you get caught? Well, ride a bicycle home from a bank robbery in the snow. I mean, that's just, I heard of a judge that had cancer and was racking up a bunch of bills. He didn't want to bankrupt his family, on this terminal cancer and all these medical bills. So he went and robbed a bank in a convertible at the drive-up window and didn't drive away. I mean, he wanted to get caught to get the free medical care. So
Oh, wow.
you have to look at the motivation, back to that theory I was talking about. Look for the hidden agenda and try to figure out what it is, and you'll get the key to motivation. And once you find the key to somebody's motivation, then you can deal with them long term. So usually, doctors deal with symptoms, but they really want to get the root cause of a medical problem. And that's kind of what we do on a daily basis, is use our communication skills to deal with symptoms. But you want to get at the root cause of a situation. Why did this guy act out the way he did? Well, he's got this other problem here. And if he can address that, then the behavior goes away. So, yeah, I mean, we faced situations that we didn't know what was going on, but usually when you go in and you talk to a guy and you figure out what the root of the problem is, and he knows, hey, look, I'm one of the few people on the planet that can help you, and it actually wants to help you. So why don't you take the attitude back to the store where you bought it and just talk to me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can tell you're somewhat reluctant to just give us the story because those stories are probably relatively traumatic for you. And we totally respect that. But now, is there anything that you mentioned it before? You kind of alluded to it about when you were talking about what that older correctional officer said about like the intercom in Walmart.
Yeah.
Is there anything? What are some of your triggers? I know that you're kind of removed from it now. You're retired, and even I would assume that if you've been working there for 20 plus years or in that system, you would probably not like boots on the ground the entire time. You might have been in an office or something. I don't know, but
well, it's weird. You would not think that smells would be a trigger, but there's certain smells that are a trigger, like a very, very large dining facility with a kitchen with lots of steaming food will make me think of the very large kitchen we had, and the many things that went on in there. Definitely noises. I'm not a fan of noisy fireworks. I'm not a fan of radio calls, radio talk.
Just chatter.
I'm definitely not going to listen to scanners or anything like that. But the Walmart intercom, that story or that you're not a correctional worker till you're at Walmart and you hear customer needs assistance, aisle 5. You get radio calls, and you know that the problem, the situation that's going on is not in your area. So you start moving toward the hallway so you can run to wherever the problem is. And that's why you're in Walmart and they say customer need, because that word needs assistance is the trigger word.
Right.
And
so that's the training you alluded to, the conditioning, and it's like the Pavlov dog thing. That's the bell for you.
Yep. And I just took off running, and I kid you not, I ran into the end cap of the stuff, that merchandise that was at the end of the aisle, knocked the crap all over the floor. Obviously, I didn't make it to the customer in aisle 5, and there I am, embarrassed and trying to pick up stuff and slink away like I didn't destroy their store.
If we could. And if you're not comfortable with this, that's fine. But can you tell us a story of a real response like that? Like, officer needs assistance. Can you tell us one of those?
Well, I'll tell you a couple of them. Mine that happened to me.
Oh, yeah?
Okay, yeah. So I called for assistance because this guy had decided he wanted to rearrange my face with a typewriter. So
oh, shit.
You had this, back in the day before computers, you had typewriters. Well, this guy had a cast iron frame Olivetti typewriter, the old hand, I'm talking, didn't even plug in,
Yeah,
it's like real heavy.
The lever things that come up.
Yeah, he had one of those real old ones. And he's coming at me to do dastardly things to my face. So I called for assistance. I did what I'm supposed to do. I called for assistance, approached this guy thinking I'm going to throw down with him. And at the last second before we're about to lock up and do something, I ordered him to just turn around and cuff up. And he looked to the ground, threw the typewriter down rather than hit me with it. And he turned around and cuffed up, which I could not believe, because I thought we were gonna, get busy. But it totally surprised me. But when we
you're like, holy shit!
When we looked into it, I looked, and he had it. It was calculated for him. He had folded up his property, took off his glasses, set them down on a table, knowing. And he even wrote his name on a piece of paper and put it on top so we would know whose stuff it was. So when he got carried off to the more secure area, that he we would find his stuff and return it to him. Okay, right. Why did he do that?
Right.
He wanted to get locked up.
But why would someone
Because for that day, he was worried about some other problem, and he felt like he needed to go to a more secure area. So how do I do it? Well, I'll just act like I want to throw a typewriter at this guy, and then they'll lock me up. So he wanted to get off the compound for some reason and go to segregated housing.
So, yeah, I mean, let your mind wander with why an inmate in a max facility would want to get locked down. That's got to be for self-preservation or something.
Yeah, I mean, whatever his reasoning was, and then over the next couple of weeks, we got to figure out what his issue was, and it was something fairly small that we could fix, but for him, it was a big deal. So, yeah, I mean, back to theory, figure out what the root cause is, what the hidden agenda is, because, look, dude, you really don't have to throw a freaking typewriter at me to get a phone number added to your phone list.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, so that one's interesting how you were on you're pressing your alarm button, but it's got to be interesting responding to a call where you have no clue.
Oh, yeah.
You just know someone needs help.
Right.
And you don't know what with, you don't know how many people are there. You don't know if someone has a weapon. You don't know anything. So what's it like? Is there a scenario you can give us where you're just charging into the fray, no idea what's going on, but you know someone needs help?
Oh, yeah. I mean, went running into Cell House, and there's guys, they like to break the broom handles, and then it gives them little short spears, So they'll have a little length of that in each hand or something, and there'll be several of them looking like they really mean business, and they'll take like the combination locks for their lockers and put them on a belt so they have a flail, so they can make weapons, I mean, instantly. Jeez. And so you go in there, and there's a whole bunch of guys with that basically armament,
rudimentary.
Yeah,
stuff.
they'll put magazines inside their coat sleeves for armor. Um, and usually there's not that many of them that really want to escalate things to that level. So you go in, you order everybody to get to their cell, lock down, and most of them do.
Yeah.
And some of the ones that look like they're meaning business, they'll do it too. And then pretty soon you end up with just a few, and hopefully you can talk to them and you don't have to throw down on them. But, lay down your stuff. And they don't. And lay down some more stuff. And then, finally we got enough people there that we deal with them. And some of that stuff got kind of raucous, and some of it wasn't too bad. But, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Yeah. Now I've got one more pointed question. All right. I want to ask you about, for lack of a better term, riots. Like when a bunch of inmates decide we're going to do something. Now, have you ever had a situation where there was a riot or there was a large-scale protest, at least relative to the size of the inmate population, and you had to deal with something like that? Like they have terms. They want something. Now we're negotiating. Like, is there something that you've dealt with like that?
Oh yeah, I mean several times, and again, it's like figure out what they want, and is it really what they want, or is it a means to get something else? But most of the time, trust no one. There's no secrets. Usually, you get wind of what's going on before it happens.
Yeah.
And how you deal with it before things happen is what makes good correctional staff. But things kick off, and you do have to react sometimes. But most of the time, you get wind of it ahead of time, and you can get the players involved and try to squash it and deal with it. But when it does happen, if they know that you're going to do the right thing according to the procedures, they know our procedures. We know their procedures.
Mm-hmm.
You basically remain professional. Don't violate those procedures. They respect you. When you go out to deal with them, they trust you. There's inherent trust when you go into it. It's not like the movies and like the days, Attica and stuff like that. I mean, it's people in corrections have learned a lot, and so have inmates, and we've got systems and technologies that help us work through things most of the time.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's got to be difficult because as officers, you guys are outnumbered, So if a bunch of them want to do something, it might be difficult for you to say no. Even though you're in the position of power, you've got the keys, there's still just sheer humanity. There's a lot of people there.
But they know that the system is designed to help them get to a better place, a nicer place, give them more privileges if they comply with the rules. If they don't comply with the rules, then the system is made to where they're placed in a place where they have less privileges. So they really don't want to be a very huge negative player in a group action like that. They want to be seen as somebody that helped the situation resolve and not somebody that caused it or prolonged it. So They've got a vested interest into making it work. I mean, a lot of them are lifetime criminals, and they know it, and they don't want to make their own situation worse because of what they're doing that day.
If I've heard many people say this, like, stick with the fundamentals or the basics. Like, everything that you're saying is just basic leadership and respect principles. There's nothing you're saying that's blowing my mind as far as methods. It's all the same things that we've been told. Respect people, stick to your guns, and it just seems like when you're in dire circumstances or when things are magnified, it's just basics, sticking to the basics. And being confident and having your basic communication tools, leadership skills, things like that.
Well, and if they know that you're planning ahead for them, then they respect you for that. I mean, I think of you guys, based on age, maybe you guys weren't here for Y2K, changing to the new millennium. All the computers are all going to die. They're all going to shut down. So we won't be able to handle, 2000 with a bunch of zeros, and not 1999 and all that stuff. So they were kind of worried that there'd be problems, and so we made sure, hey, no, things are going to be good. Matter of fact, if there's no heat, because it's New Year's, right? I mean, it's we're gonna get you guys extra long johns, and we're gonna get you an additional coat, and we've actually even bought sleeping bags for everybody in case the heat goes down. You did what? You bought sleeping bags? Yeah, I mean, if a computer can't control the heat, we're gonna be indoor camping. Yeah, we got it figured out. You know, we've got you know, like these rations that last 1,000 years. You know, in the tinfoil thing, we've got all that stuff. We got you covered.
Yeah, yeah. And in the case of some kind of economic collapse, a prison might not be a bad place to be.
Yeah, well, I mean, we had them covered. You know, and then it was pretty hilarious because there's one dude that thought he had a chip in his head, and that he got signals from a satellite that told him everything to do.
That was his alibi?
That was his alibi, yeah.
What?
He blamed his crime on being commanded by a satellite because he had this chip in his head. So here I am listening to this, you know, at midnight, and there's almost midnight, and there's no sounds, no noise, and then in the cell next to him, and I'll just call the guy Freddie. Hey, Freddie, how's that chip? Because, you know, everybody's trying to make him think that it's going to malfunction and maybe hurt him or something.
Imaginary chip.
Yeah, so they kind of talk. Shut up, man. Leave me alone. How's that chip? What's going on? You feeling anything? and then, you know, it got past midnight. You all right? Leave me alone, man. Leave me alone. Hey, Freddie, what time zone's that chip on? That lasted about a half hour, and it was all over, but it was kind of funny for the moment.
Yeah.
But, and then the next morning, those guys all walked to breakfast together, and they were laughing about it. So.
Yeah, well, it's good that people can smile and joke in that situation, and we hope that they can rehabilitate. And we're going to ask you more about that, but we're going to go into a break and thank our sponsor. How's it going, everybody? This is Spike from the Purgatory Podcast. When Matt and I decided to start this podcast, neither one of us knew kind of where to start or how to distribute it to different platforms, and that's when we came across the Anchor app. Now, Anchor is the easiest way to make a podcast because they give you everything you need in one place for free, which you can use right from your computer or your phone. Different creation tools allow you to record and edit your podcast so it sounds great, and this was the kicker for me. They'll distribute your podcast with no minimum listenership to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and several more. Now, there's really only one more thing left for you to do if you're looking to start a podcast, and that's get out your phone, open your laptop, download the Anchor app, and go to anchor.fm to get started. All right, welcome back from the break. Did you get lost while we were on break for 20 seconds?
Yeah.
Yeah. It never gets old. I always say that every time we come out of break, and everybody's like, "Ha, funny." It's for me, not for you. I think it's funny, so it stays. Anyway, now I know that the Madman had a couple more questions, and I can see him on the show notes, and I want to hear them too. So.
Gotcha. Another one of my questions was like, I mean, when just living on the outside world, we have like a lot of TV shows and movies that portray prison in like a certain way, such as like the Shawshank Redemptions and Prison Break. How realistic do you think those shows or movies are to like the real world prisons?
I think maybe at one time, many decades ago, maybe at certain facilities, they show a glimpse. It might have been what it was like on a certain day at a certain hour, but it's certainly not like what it is now. And even at that prison, if it's still around, it's not like it is on a daily basis. I mean, the rule to think of is everybody in prison, they want the easiest day possible, just kind of like we do out here, and they don't necessarily want to go about making it any worse than that. Yeah, there's people in power that in different cliques or groups or that want to make, rake in more power, and they use puppets to go do their bidding like you see in movies and stuff. But most of the time they talk a lot before something happens because they don't want the conflict, because then maybe their whole group would get locked down and they don't want to do that. They want to have chicken day and, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
Like, it's meatloaf today.
Yeah.
it's meatloaf day. Let's do this bad thing after lunch because I want my meatloaf.
After lunch, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you know, nothing. I don't care what you hear. Nothing's happening before the Super Bowl. Nothing.
Oh, yeah?
Because they want to watch the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? There might be something happen a few days later because somebody lost a bet they can't pay or something like that, but usually that stuff gets squashed as well. So,
yeah. I remember I heard a story from you that there was like an intramural flag football team, and there were like NFL caliber players on this flag football team.
oh yeah, I mean, in the baseball world, I mean, NFL or baseball players, pro baseball players, they're a reflection of society. Some of them get locked up. Basketball players, some of them get locked up. Football players, some of them get locked up, and they get locked up before they get to start their career. Some of them get locked up during or after their career. I can remember, you know, going into a cell house. There is a problem. There's guys having issues, and there's a piece of contraband, and it gets handed off to a no kidding former NFL running back, and I am trying to chase this guy. And he
like, see ya.
he looks over his shoulder. I was already running as fast as I could, and I thought I was fast back in the day, you know, and I'm chasing this guy. He looks over his shoulder, and he's just gone.
Yeah, you're like,
It's like, okay,
radio,
now
yeah.
I know why he was an NFL running back. That dude was gone. So, yeah, no, I didn't get any contraband that day. He flushed it. So,
Wow.
yeah. And it, you know, great, big, strong guys. So, you know, we talked about moving that one guy that was being rowdy in his cell. Well, there were two guys in this one cell, and they had drawn a bunch of negative attention. And what they were trying to do was show what a bad actor they were and try to make their bones and get promoted in their disruptive group or gang or whatever. And so they were supposed to raise a bunch of cane and cause us to go in on them and have this big conflict and then go down hard, you know, and possibly hurt one of us or whatever. So we went in there on these guys, and since there was two, we went in with more than the customary amount. We went in with like.
well, what does that look like? Are you just wearing fatigues or like how, or what does that look like?
No, you get on a flak jacket and gloves and a helmet, and normally if it's one guy, a team goes in. One guy gets an arm, one guy gets a leg, one guy gets the other arm, one guy gets the other leg. You talk about it ahead of time. You lay him down gently. You ask if he can walk out. You probably restrain him with handcuffs or something. You change him to a new cell. Since there was two, I think there was 6 of us, but I can't remember. And I remember going in, and everybody but me went against one guy. I was like, oh my God, I got this guy myself. And finally ended up getting this guy down on the floor, and I whispered to him, and he's still kind of struggling, and I whispered to him, hey, you just lay here? I'll just lay here. So we're just laying there, and nobody's moving. I mean, why conflict if you don't have to, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's dark because they had put shampoo all over the floor, and they blocked the lights. They blocked the window out so nobody could see in there. It was really dark. Well, the
In their
guys,
cell, right?
yeah, the guys got done with the other guy, and they came over to me. Well, one of them piled on what he thought was a fight, and it wasn't a fight. We're just both laying there. Well, now this guy started struggling again, and so I ended up with these leg manacles that were his, because it was his job to put this leg manacle on the guy. And I have this ankle, and I ended up trying to put the leg manacles on my fellow coworker in the dark. That was not cool.
You just grabbed a leg.
Yeah, I just grabbed a leg in the dark. It was the wrong guy. Yeah, that was kind of fun, kind of comical. And then we got the guy, you know, basically when we talked to him, he de-escalated very quickly, and he just walked out. I mean, we didn't have to do anymore.
Seems like a lot of the situations, the words are your best
Oh yeah.
bet.
your best defense is your your communication skills and your Nike response. Run from it or talk your way out of it. Stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, nobody wants conflict, not even them. I mean, you hear about it, you see it maybe on TV and stuff, and that stuff does happen. I mean, when a person has lived their life as a bully, and you put a lot of those people together, sooner or later they can't back up their bully. They've got somebody challenges them,
Right.
And I can think of a day in the lunch line, even in school. Don't cut. Get at the back of the line.
Don't step on the back of my feet.
Yeah, it's just respect, right? So we had this new guy, and he's in line. It's his first day, and this other guy walks in and cuts right in front of him, and he says, "Hey, man." And the guy that'd been there for a long time turns around and goes, "You must not know who I am." The new guy punched him right in the side of the head, knocked him out with one hit. Guy fell clear to the floor, like you just chopped him down.
Yeah.
And the new guy turned around, cuffs up to the staff without resistance, and says, "I guess he doesn't know who I am." So yeah, that stuff happens. You put a bunch of bullies together, sooner or later something's going to happen. But
it's always a bigger fish.
Yeah, most of the time they don't want confrontation, and neither do we. There's some posturing, but most of the time.
Yeah, what's interesting about that is if the guy that got knocked out wouldn't have cut, there wouldn't have been an issue.
Yeah,
This guy just wanted to start some shit.
So when I got there, I was struck by all the rules of etiquette and politeness that my grandmother taught me were, by and large, how people were told to live. I mean,
yeah, that's what I meant earlier about like basics.
Show basic courtesy. And those who either were brought up without it their whole life, they will learn it, because people say, well, he disrespected me. Basically, he was not a courteous person.
Right.
I mean, so
yeah. Madman, what else you got?
I was gonna say like something we kind of glossed over is like maybe like your first day, your first week. Like how did you get into working here?
Yeah, I mean, nobody wakes up and when they're 10 years old, what do you want to be when you grow up? Oh, I want to be a fireman. I want to be a prison worker. No, you don't really think of that. For me, it was I was looking for supplementary work in that it was a contract service that the facility needed. So I was going in and talking about this skill that I had that maybe they would pick me up on a contract and I could perform just intermittently or every couple months and do this thing for them. And then they were like, you know what? We think we'd just like to hire you full time. And I thought about it, and it was for me the best move. I mean, health insurance. People a lot of talk these days about insurance. Health insurance was better, and the pay within a few years would put me far and above where I was at, and the retirement system was going to be the same or better. And I thought, it's a good move for me. So I went to the training, and I figured I could always fall back on what I was doing, and went to all the training, and then I went to the schools and stuff and started the job. And it seemed like I could create an environment around me each day that they knew I was real, that I was genuine. I mean, I became one of the ones that they came to and they wanted the truth. Even if it wasn't something they wanted to hear, I'd tell them the truth, So yeah, I mean, when you get that reputation as, say, one of the honorable staff, I mean, you got to kind of watch what you say. One day, I was joking, and they honestly did not know I was joking. And it was a day where we had chicken, and it was a day after we had been outside for a fire drill. Okay, not a fire drill, like a electric motor burned up, and it put a bunch of that acrid smoke from a electric motor.
It's a fire response, not a drill.
So we evacuated 2 full cell houses, and we're all out on the exercise yard. And we have extra staff out there, and everybody's pretty nervous because it's out of the normal,
Mm-hmm.
And but what was really weird was, I don't know why, but there's about 2,000 pigeons on the roof of one of the buildings, and they were all hanging out in the sun, and maybe they're pecking flies off the roof or something. I mean, I don't know. They were all congregating on the roof. So the following day, we're in the dining facility, and this guy said, and they're eating chicken, and this guy says, "Hey, Rup, why is the chicken so small?"
Yeah.
And I said, you remember those pigeons yesterday, right? Oh man, that turned into like this big rumor. And guys were getting upset. Oh, they're feeding us pigeons. And
Oh my God.
so all my
Can
bosses,
you imagine a bunch of correctional officers plucking pigeon feathers?
my bosses came to me and they're like, "What did you say?" I said, "What are you talking about?" "Well, we're hearing this and that, and something about pigeons." I'm like, "Oh man," they took me serious. So I went and I got the same guys. I'm like, "Look, dudes, I was totally joking, and now this has gotten way out of hand, and so I'm going to basically, heavy hitters in different places, telling them, nah, I was just making it up. There's nothing to do with
Yeah,
pigeons."
like play this through.
Yeah.
All right? How does this work? Like, are we
Why?
shooting them? Is there a big net?
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, yeah.
how did
Yeah.
that? Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Just like my my final question was like, do you think being incarcerated has like really helped people, like keeping them off the streets or keeping them off the drugs? How do you feel about that?
I think it's up to the individual. When the individual has a true attitude adjustment of their core beliefs, a lot of times guys have to hit rock bottom before they believe that they need to change their behavior. And there's a lot of guys that do that in prison. I mean, they find religious reasons why they need to change their behavior. It affects them when they didn't get to see their kids graduate school and they didn't get to go to mom's funeral or whatever the event was. And they look at their life and they're just not going back to that, especially, if they have an out date and they do get back where they want to be. Yeah, they're going to change their behavior because they had a core transition inside, But then there's other guys that they feel like, well, I did this crime, but I wasn't doing it to that person. I was doing it to this institution, or I was doing it to the government, or, and then those guys, I mean, some guys say, "Oh, getting locked up's the best thing that ever happened to me." I mean, it saved my life. I was on a horrible life path, and look what it did for me. And those guys will probably do fine when they get out. But the ones that think, "Oh, well, they locked me up because of," and they have all kinds of excuses, that guy's probably not going to change.
What's it like to see that guy and then see him get released and you're like, "Oh no," like recidivism? Like what's it like dealing? Is it hard to not have a fatalistic attitude about some of
Yeah,
that?
I mean, some of them you look at them and you're like, yeah. As a matter of fact, the other day, I'm not kidding you, I went to Walmart. I was headed to the customer service counter, and my field of vision panned toward the customer service counter. There was a guy leaving the customer service counter, and he was in my field of vision for 5 or 6 steps. I was looking at the customer service counter. This clown pops off in some gang type language about why am I eyeballing him? He'll have to just whatever my behind. And I'm thinking, yeah, dude, I've seen where you're going to go. I have seen where you're going. I've been there, and you have no idea where you're headed. I mean, here he was wanting to pick a fight with a guy that's 40 years older than him because I'm looking at the customer service counter and he walks through my field of vision. Yeah, I thought, I know where you're headed. And you see that inside
you saw
too.
like the core attitude,
Yeah.
and you're like,
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
thought, I do not have time to deal with your goofy hind end now. I'm worried about whatever my business is at the customer service counter.
yeah,
But he, in a different environment, I couldn't have let that go.
right.
I'd had to say, hey, come here. Let's talk about this. Yeah, no, couldn't have let it go. I can remember, prison is a reflection of society. So I can remember when people came into my area, I would say, hey, you need to pull your pants up. And they'd be like, da, 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 da. I'd say, well, hold on. I'm asking you nice. If you're not going to pull your pants up, I'll fix a situation where your pants are up. And they didn't understand what I meant. When 3 or 4 of the older guys around the area hear this whole thing, they've been through it with me, so they start laughing. Young guy kind of feels a little bit disrespect because the others are laughing. I said, look, I'm not trying to disrespect you. I'm just telling you I'll fix the situation. At least pull him up while I'm here. So he kind of pulls him up, and then next time when he comes in my area, hey, remember we talked last time? You need to pull your pants up. Okay. Wouldn't listen, gave me a little grief. So I would go down to the laundry and I just talked to the people that gave him his clothes. I'd say, hey, you know this guy? Yeah. I want you to shrink his pant size down, till they're really small. I don't want him to be able to have baggy pants, sagging, dragging, nothing. I don't want him to be able to put his hands in his pockets. I want everybody to see what God gave him. So he comes, man, I hear you had something to do with this. My pants are all shrunk up and I got too small of pants and I need a 65-inch waist and I'm only 120 pounds and no, dude, you need a size 28 waist.
Yeah.
And
he's just mad.
And
That's
it takes
awesome.
about, you can turn in pants and request new ones, right? But you can only turn 2 in a week. Well, if you have 6 pairs, it's going to take you some time to get this lined out to where you have pants that are larger. So he gets 2 new pairs of pants. Well, those are the only 2 he wears because he doesn't want to wear the other ones. Then he gets 2 more, and then he gets 2 more, and finally he's got his 6 pants, and he's good to go. And they get washed, in the laundry every couple of days, and you can turn them in to get them washed. Well, then he turns his in, and he wants size 65-inch waist, and they're like, no, dude, you get a 38.
Yeah.
And so then he's coming down the hall, and I see him pulling up his pants.
Yeah.
There's some other guy, and I'm like, hey man, you need to pull up your pants. And then I say, I'm not threatening you. I'll fix it. And then he's one of the ones laughing at the young guy.
Yeah.
That's kind of how you have to hold the line. I couldn't have let that guy in another situation, that guy from Walmart at customer service desk. Why are you talking to somebody like that in public, the general public? He knew that I wasn't a threat to him.
Well, he was only saying that because he knew there
necessarily.
wouldn't be any repercussions.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. But he did not show the courtesy that my grandmother told me to show total strangers. And when he gets to where I think he's headed, he's going to have a load of problems because he doesn't know how to live his life with courtesy and respect toward other human beings.
Yeah, those are good concepts for all of us.
Yeah. One of the final questions I have is, can you share with us a story in which you and your coworkers were able to laugh and kind of have fun in that setting? Just because, me and Spike work at the same place, and we often just kind of hang out and tell jokes. Did you guys ever have that at your office?
Yeah, they tried to create situations on occasion, like once a month maybe, or once every couple of months, where maybe at the time when 2 shifts were available, like one shift is getting off and one shift is coming on, so they would have, let's say afternoon shifts getting off, evening shifts coming in, so they would have hot dogs on the lawn or something like that, right? So everybody's planning on it, and maybe they didn't bring lunch that day or whatever, so they're just going to do hot dogs on the lawn. Everybody's going to talk and stuff. And not everybody can go because some people have still work when they do it in shifts. Like 3 or 4 guys go out, 3 or 4 guys come in, some more go out. But over a couple hour time, everybody can go out and get their hot dog, talk. So we're out there, and it starts pouring down rain. And I'm standing under this tree because it's raining less under the tree than it is out from under the tree. And a couple of the guys are like, you better get inside because it's starting to lightning and you might get hit by lightning. And I looked at him and I said, that's all right. Warden's tree is taller than mine.
Oh, yeah.
This is a better lightning rod, right? And everybody freaking cracked up. I just kept eating my hot dog, and they kept on lightning all around. And the warden came over and he says, that's pretty funny stuff, man. You think my tree's taller? I said, yeah. I said, your tree was taller. I said, you get hit first. I'm going to keep eating my hot dog.
It's got to be to that kind of thread or that tangent. You're in a place where you kind of have to be on your guard or alert all the time, 100% of the time, or at least from what I think. Or is there any point where you can let your guard down, or is the minute you let your guard down the minute that something happens?
That's a piece of it. I mean, you have to be hyper vigilant, which kind of leads to PTSD issues and some other things. It's hard to let your guard down because you have to always be aware, but no more aware and vigilant than, say, a school teacher, a really good school teacher. I mean, they know what's going on in their room. They know what's going on in their school. That's kind of why I made the comparison earlier with a big school. The school teachers that you can imagine as you grew up, they would be great correctional workers if they were great school teachers. The ones that got eaten alive by their kids, they would get eaten alive by inmates. The ones that get eaten alive by inmates would get eaten alive by kindergartners. You know, it's a resilience, it's a strong personality. They carry themselves well. They know the procedures. They follow the procedures and the rules, and they're aware of what goes on around them. So yeah. But hey, back to the thing. Funny. Mm-hmm. So we train with firearms. So we had 23 people on the firing line shooting at targets, and there's a half a dozen firearms instructors or so, and they tell you when to fire, what to do, and it was actually deer season. So some of the guys had been out deer hunting before work, changed their clothes, come to work, but they're thinking deer, deer, deer. That's all they got on their brain, right? So we're firing, and then we hear, she's fired, she's fired, she's fired. And I look, and above the impact zone where the bullets are all hitting on the hill behind the targets, we had woken up a huge buck. He was sleeping up on the berm behind the targets. And all the deer hunters are like going into catatonic shock, you know, and they've got this weapon in their hands.
I'm in the woods all damn morning.
They got this weapon in their hands, and they're like, oh my God, there he is. And he's mocking me. I want him so bad. And they're like, make your weapon safe, ground your weapon, stand there and look at the big buck laugh at you as he flips you off and runs over the hill. Yeah. It was hilarious. All the deer hunters are like, oh my God, I got to go get him.
Yeah, I've been in the woods all damn day. This dude did my job.
And I have a weapon with all these rounds in it.
Yeah. Well, we're running out of time. This has been awesome. This has been a great show. Is there anything you want to, like, any closing statement or like anything you want to leave us with? I think that you've said a lot with, just the basic courtesy. Remember what your grandma said, golden rule type stuff. Now, can you kind of sum it all up with one or two sentences?
Yeah, I mean, people don't realize that a lot of people make great inmates and they live a relatively happy and productive life where they're at. Many people cannot live without self-imposed, or they don't have self-imposed discipline. They need discipline imposed upon them, and for them, prison is really great. And a lot of them make that their lifelong vocation, if you will, and they do it on purpose. And that's why you think of dumb criminal. I mean, the guy that drives up to the bank in a convertible, the drive-up window, and robs a bank in a convertible to get free health care, he's not dumb. The guy that rides a bicycle home from a bank robbery in the snow, he's not dumb. He wanted to go back, So they have an agenda, and you just got to figure out what it is. And a lot of guys make great inmates and lousy citizens, and others that get their chance when they get released, they make great citizens because they want to prove themselves. They want to represent others that are going to get out well. So they need that first good job reference, and they're going to bust their tail to do a great job. So it's not always a bad thing, to look at a convicted felon to hire them, because a lot of corporations get tax credits. Convicted felon gets his first good job reference, and a lot of times they are going to bust their tail because they want to keep that job.
Yeah, there's a lot of places that don't hire them. Yep. Well, we hope that that is what happens in all prisons and for all inmates, is that they can be rehabilitated and join society and be productive and find a job, and we hope that the goal for recidivism is zero, and we're all hoping that happens. And it sounds like you were doing everything you could, and we need more correctional officers like yourself, and hopefully you created a culture. I'm sure you did do your best to create a culture in which that was the main goal. But we really appreciate you coming on the show. It's been awesome. It's been
I feel honored that you had me. I hope I didn't stick my foot in my mouth too much.
I just want to say from my side, it was great to have you on, and I hope to have you on another episode in the future. Just to have like a few more questions answered with some more time.
All right, make sure to like, subscribe, favorite, wherever you're listening to this, whichever platform, for more content like this, because we enjoy bringing it to you. So tell your friends, tell your fam, and always be sure to get your weekly dose of Purgatory.
Bye.